Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Friday morning West Coast time space show program. And I'm your host, David Livingston. Thank you very much for tuning in. A hot topic we have been talking about on the space show, and so has space media and other lots of important and interested people, are computers, data centers, and similar things in space. We'll be doing that with Gary Barnard, who I will introduce in just a minute. I just want to give you a reminder that there is no program on Sunday, and that's Mother's Day. So we don't do programs on Mom's Day and Dad's Day. And on next Tuesday, Rod Pyle and Aggie Coburn are with us to talk about the upcoming ISDC program. That will be with us. And then Friday after that is Ryan Dowdy, Dr. Ryan Dowdy, who was the food manager for ISS and Artemis missions. See, he's going to talk about how they feed and what they have to do to get nutrition for the ISS as well as the Artemis crew. And then Manny is with us on Sunday with his virtual moon program that he's finally launching after many, many years. So I've tried it before. It's fantastic. I did not get sick using his VR, and I don't know if we can translate his VR across Zoom. I doubt that we can, but Manny should be a really great guest. So Gary is with us. He's very active, and he's held many, many important positions and still does with the National Space Society. He's going to be a key participant in ISDC, and if we have a little bit of time, he can give us a glimpse of ISDC and what's coming up. In the meantime, he is the owner and president of Extraordinary Innovative Space Partnerships, and he does focus on and works with cislunar mission development. He also has a systems engineering consulting company and lots more. His full bio is up on the website, and so you can check it out. I urge you to check it out. And we're fortunate to have Gary with us, who wrote a very interesting article about 10 days ago on data centers in space and posted it on the Howard Bloom newsletter, email newsletter. If you're one of the about 10,000 folks who get that email, um, you should make sure you read it. And as soon as I get some access to some other space show pages that are currently being crawled by LLMs, we're going to put it up on the space show blog. And we'll probably also see if we can link to it on Substack. Gary, welcome back to the program today. How are you?
Oh, very well. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think this is an important discussion to be had. Fair warning, if you can imagine the idea that a pragmatic robotic space systems engineer is not an oxymoron, I'm arguably the embodiment of the same. It's been rumored that I speak the English language is at best a second language, whether or not my first language is some form of computer programming, language, be it Lisp, Prolog, or what have you, as a matter of some debate. The subject at hand here, though, of space data centers, I think is particularly important because we've passed the realm of space solar power and space power in general being just a niche thing to uh, build for special purpose satellites that are essentially handcrafted, in large measure handcrafted endeavors, and are instead looking at how we can build what amounts to being space infrastructure that can endure and serve a range of customers, both in space and on Earth. And the question comes in, how is it that we make that happen? uh, sort of the beginning of this journey is that in order for something to be possible, some number of people have to think it possible. And we're in the midst of that right now, with respect to space solar power, where things are breaking out in interesting ways. And it's become not a question of how many impossible things you have to accept for breakfast, with due regards to Lewis Carroll in those regards, but rather it's now, since that number has been reduced to zero, the question comes in is for the different venues that you have, be it space to space, surface to surface, space to the lunar surface or asteroidal surfaces, or space to Earth. What matters? What are the fundamental figures of merits in those venues, and what can you actually do to serve a customer? And there are many folks that have said, well, if you're going to do something big, you need a big customer. How do you get there? Okay, well, it turns out this is no longer an abstract discussion. There are a collection of entities, mostly, by headed up by billionaires that are somewhere between what was the line, irrational exuberance, I believe. you know, uh, Back in the day, during the stock market, and folks that are more profoundly concerned as to whether or not folks have visions of figuring out, making the shall we say, an understanding of fundamental physics and the laws of thermodynamics, akin to counting the number of angels that can dance on the head of a pin. My contention on this is that data centers represent an example of a high volume power user, okay, that could potentially make sense in space and in any number of capacities with respect to the functionality that may be provided. However, if you go off and there's shall we say, a limitation to carnival barking, okay, going and claiming that you can just decide you're going to do this and willy-nilly make it happen on a trivial basis, I think is sheer fantasy. Okay. On the other hand, the opposite side of the spectrum, the folks that at least have a passing acquaintance with the fundamental laws of thermodynamics, say, and I believe the contemporary vernacular is WTF. Yeah, okay, this doesn't, the numbers don't make sense. I believe both of those positions are not terribly constructive. One being, overly enthusiastic in claiming that this is a trivial problem sets yourself up for a difficult situation. You you want the projects to succeed. I would argue you want the projects to succeed, not be the victim of some irrational exuberance and pump and dump stock scheme, nor do you want to overpromise something that gets proves intractable, if not untenable. Um, the Looking at it from the flip side is that there are systems engineering is not a priori discipline specific exercise. It's something, I would argue, and uh, it shows its best promise and value in the cross-discipline understanding that can be gained by both the broader characterization of the problem space you're trying to deal with, as well as how you can understanding how you can structure and order the knowledge and your understanding with respect to the potential solution space. To wit, you run the numbers for just generating the necessary power to be able to feed a data center in space. Unless if you treat it as strictly a power generation and waste heat problem, you've got a serious difficulty. Okay, we see that with respect to space solar power systems that have been proposed. You can go through and come up with radiators that scale large enough, and you can make the proportions work. It does not come easily, but it is possible, and there are multiple designs that are on the table that at least appear to be achieving a reasonable thermodynamic balance in terms of the scale, but they are huge. uh, you know, um, and they would have to be with respect to meeting data center requirements, which offers up some interesting synergy between how we press forward with the promise of space solar power versus having a customer that needs that power in space, which is a whole hell of a lot easier to deliver it to than going space to Earth to begin with in those regards.
Um,
So
so for everyone, and I know we have one new person in the show. I'm not an engineer. My background is economics and on the finance side. And we hear uh, every side of this. It's economic. We can do it. The radiators are not such a big issue. An engineering group that has a great newsletter, and Jossie can talk more about it. Mach 33 has run numbers, and all doable, all plausible. Of course, we hear from SpaceX all the time. Who do you trust out there as having credible, believable data, or do you not trust any of the people entering this
quite
discussion?
frankly, David, uh, I trust first in terms of an understanding of fundamental physics.
Uh-huh.
Okay. If you try and solve this problem as strictly a what amounts to being a generation and waste heat disposal problem, it does not scale well at all. Okay, you start accumulating a significant number of impossible things you have to accept before breakfast. However, there is a solution to this. It is, and it turns out it isn't rocket science. It's called viewing this as a combined heat and power problem. What it amounts to is that you have to take whatever waste heat that is being generated and turn that into a resource of progressively more modest, delta heat, more modest temperature taps. Okay, so that you generate the power. The next most, likely most toasty thing that you have to cope with is the processors in your data center. Okay, so you go and feed, connect the loops, the heat dissipation loops to that. Then the next below that is probably going to be your habitation, how it is that you're providing, for a balanced thermal environment for habitation, and likely akin, if not greater than that, is you have manufacturing activities that require a significant heat transport load, and you basically work it to the point where the change in temperature between effectively ambient and the heat left to reject is not quite nil, okay, but pretty damn close to it. You can basically, the goal is to get it to the point where the structures, in terms of their ability to radiate heat, effectively by their thermal mass and volume are sufficient that the so-called black body radiation, basically radiation off the structure itself, is sufficient. You may not get there, okay, but you can, whatever's left, you can have, modest or reasonable radiators for, okay, to cope with. The numbers work
Gary,
out.
I jump in and ask a kind of a clarification on David's question, which was about who did you trust? I was wondering if you'd read the NASA report on space-based solar power. It came out a
Absolutely.
couple of years ago, and do you trust NASA, for example, to have done a good job there and in analyzing it, or did they miss something?
The answer is that that report having there was a version of that report that was written that actually attempted to provide a earnest assessment of where we were with respect to space solar power. It turns out that was not what the prevailing administration at that point in time wanted to hear. So they finally rewrote it, got another group, rewrote it to provide the conclusion that they dictated was required, okay, and left the original author's name in the at the end of the list, as a means of pressing the point that they were trying to make. If you read the report itself, you discover that NASA is doing some interesting technology development work and concedes that there may be, instances where this could make sense. However, as they clearly outlined in the executive summary, they chose a scenario that was deliberately intended to not succeed, to not make sense, and they clearly stated it was their objective to prove that.
I actually met the guy who wrote the original report at ISDC, maybe last year or the year
Nikolai
before.
Joseph.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And yeah, he was kind of disappointed that they rewrote his report, but I kind of got the impression that it was not entirely a political thing. It was more like, he wrote the draft and then a lot of other people came in and all those other opinions had to be consolidated in some way. And so they ended up with maybe a more conservative assessment of the technology as opposed to his view was a little bit optimistic, perhaps. It was
Forgive me, it is not so much a political situation as a determination of what business NASA wants to be in. NASA doesn't want to be building power stations, okay, or at least didn't at that particular at that particular juncture. Okay, NASA likes doing technology development work. Okay, they wish to be able to have technology to both enhance and enable missions. They would dearly love to have commercial electrical utilities in space that could meet their power requirements. Okay, I when I first got mixed up in this, space solar power in earnest, was back in 2008. Pete Warden and I had decided that things had gone off the rails with respect to the space solar power, community, and that there was a cast of characters that were running around claiming it was the way and the light and going to save us from everything. Okay, on one side, and on the opposite side, there were folks that are saying you cannot let the camel get its nose underneath the tent because you know what's going to happen if we let them. They're going to want to build the big ones.
By the way, could you
Okay.
just tell us who Pete Warden is? Because I'm not sure everybody knows who Pete Warden is.
Pete Warden at the time was the center director for NASA Ames. He's also an Air Force general, um, and noted astronomer
He's
and
been on the
scientist.
show, he's been a guest on the show multiple times and is in the archives if anyone wants to go hear
Yeah.
his programs.
The upshot of it
Well, he's
was that we felt we needed to do something about that. Okay, and there was a NASA Advanced Technology Working Group meeting where it was decided that, well, gosh, gee, we could stage a debate. Was there a business case for space solar power? Now, the trick is that Pete and I actually agreed that there was something to the space-to-space stuff, and probably the surface-to-surface stuff, and maybe the space to lunar surface or asteroids, but he couldn't get his head around the economics of the space to Earth stuff, and felt that there was an awful lot of frog kissing that needed to be done before serious money was put down on it. And as a
Frog kissing? I've never heard that
frog
expression
kissing,
before. What is frog
that
kissing?
is the term of art which he used.
I know he's
Okay.
also famous for the self-licking ice cream cone, but
Yes.
but
The
but I haven't heard frog kissing, so you got to define frog kissing for us.
so well the idea being is that there are many things that people come forward with that they're incredibly enthusiastic about and show some degree of promise, but when you start tilting at them, uh, they are not necessarily tractable, much less tenable.
Is Musk
Okay.
tilting at data centers in space?
And hence the relevance for here is that this is a case where data centers fall into that realm. In order for us to figure out what's going to make sense there, we've got some frog kissing to do. Okay, and the opportunity is there. And what I did um, was just to explore the issue as to how far out on a limb I had gone with my opinion on this stuff. Is I pulled together a little with Claude a little working model of what the thermal balance would be. And if you do it as a combined heat and power problem, there is it appears not only tenable, but there are tractable. It does seem like there are tractable solutions to it. You do have other concerns, such as the radiation environment, but one of the things that we've learned um, from ISS is that the radiation environment, as it turns out, is far more benign than was originally anticipated. The conventional assumption is that as your feature size went down in processors, you eventually would run into a limit where the single event upsets and other impacts from radiation would be too dangerous to go through and effectively use. The latest generation uh, you know uh, CPUs processors. It turns out Hewlett Packard did an interesting experiment. They took two high performance compute modules from their high performance computing scalable architecture systems, and they flew them on ISS, lightly repackaged. And the anecdotal story on it is that in the 2 years that they were running in that particular experiment, there were two failures that occurred, and it was not due to single event failures or the density of the tracings or anything else. It was because the astronauts accidentally turned them off.
So,
Uh,
Gary, back to Musk. So I think you said you kind of trust Musk and his team of engineers, at least within the space of, like putting up a satellite that converts photons into energy, gets rid of heat, those kinds of thermodynamics problems, which you understand. I think you're saying you also trust Musk and his team to kind of get those sort of details right. Is
what
that what
I
you're saying? Or
trust, what I trust is in the engineering that
yeah.
not only where you can lay out the theory, but you can test it and it works and you understand what you're doing. Okay. SpaceX has done extraordinary things. If you get yourself up close and personal to a Merlin or a Raptor engine and look at it, there's been such a radical reduction in the number of piece parts, the amount of hand tooling. They friggin' have figured out how to build rocket engines in a factory, for God's sakes. You go to a J2X series engine, they're still a friggin' art project. Uh, I'm sorry.
What,
Maybe
yeah, but what
elegant
about
engineering, but we need rocket engines that look like they come from off of a Ford automotive plant, not
but
something
what
that.
about the satellites, the solar panels, the thermal radiators, like that stuff that's more about satellites? Do you think SpaceX and Elon and what Elon says, like Elon says things that don't always necessarily reflect engineering at reality. So this has happened in the past. Just don't be too surprised.
Mhm.
Um, but but in terms of the stuff you would really understand well, it sounds like you understand the thermal balance problem really well. What do you think of their assertions that they can put satellites in space that economically make AI data centers work up there?
Well, first and foremost, in any technical discipline, there's a far more than a gaggle of engineers that are more expert than I. I just so happen to have crossed so many lines and swim lanes and been forced in a situation to make things work. I own the system level requirements for advanced automation and robotics for what's become the ISS. And we had to write the robotic systems integration standards from scratch, both in terms of the accommodation requirements and the interface standards. So I've already walked through the valley. The shadow of
But
death and
yeah,
knows the ground.
On this show,
But
you're the
on
deaf
this, there is
person.
there's real things that they've done. If you look at the evolution of the Starlink satellites, what is happening there, it is, we now have, well, one, SpaceX has more satellites now operating and flying than have ever flown in the history of space flight. Okay, they've gone from being able to provide an acceptance level service, which is if you've got a choice between nothing and something, and if it's affordable, people will pay for something. Okay, to where they're pressing to compete in the quality of service market, both in terms of performance, availability, and security. This is extraordinary. And of course, you have multiple other players now that want to go into the LEO and MEO constellation business. So there is something there. I I have profound respect, for people that actually get things built and working. Uh, you know, decades, well, back in 2011 at one of the, uh, you know, um, space business symposia we put on associated with the International Space Development Congress. I was there with some folks that were their big thing was mergers, acquisitions, and what's come to be known as tipping point investments. And he asked me, well, you guys, how do you know which one of these folks you should believe? That are claiming that there's going to be a commercial rocket business. Okay, and I said, listen, there's lots of people that can talk pretty, but in the end, it comes down to the fire and smoke. Are they actually building rockets? Are they launching them? Have they had them fail and recovered from it?
Yeah. I
So
was trying to get you to
those are
talk
the
about the
folks
thermal
that,
balance.
yeah.
I wanted you to
So,
talk about
so
not
can
the
I
rockets, the
jump?
thermal balance. Yeah, go ahead. Go
Can I
ahead. Jump
jump?
in.
Yeah,
I
John,
like,
jump in. Let's get some other people talking here.
yeah. So Gary, would you be interested in a systems engineering analysis of SpaceX's Starlink um, uh, design and scaling it to data centers in space and looking at the first principles physics behind that?
Oh,
There.
absolutely. I've
Okay.
got a few of the
So
pieces of that which
yeah.
we'll be able to share with you that
Yeah.
that I was
So,
doing.
so, so there was analysis by this investment group called Mach 33, and they looked at um, version 3 of the Starlink system coming up. And they looked at the thermodynamics and the physics behind scaling from 20 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts.
Mm-hmm.
They looked at radiative cooling and found that it is not a physics blocker in that transition. And the solar dominates the spacecraft footprint as power scales. Spacecraft geometry grows through deployables, not the bus, and mass, not area, is the binding trade-off. So radiator mass is an architectural choice, and then the bottom line is that scaling Starlink platform from 20 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts, spacecraft designed towards very large solar surfaces and a slightly heavier compute-centric bus. So radiators scale linearly along the power and remain an engineering item, not a blocker to feasibility. So they have a model for this thermodynamic analysis, and they've debunked the cooling constraint in space data centers. I can provide this article and put it on the blog, and their model for this, their systems engineering model, is free to access. So if you'd like to take a look at that and see how it
I'd
compares
love
to
to,
yours,
and we can share the stuff that I've done. But going back, my point is that if it violated fundamental laws of thermodynamics, it would be untenable. It
agreed.
doesn't.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm pointing out, though, is to make it tractable. What is most useful is to optimize both the thermal mass and your use of multiple heat taps. Treat as a combined heat and power problem where you're minimizing the amount of waste heat that you want to try and radiate. Okay, and the holy grail, of course, would be to get it to the point where you have enough mass and enough surface area that you don't even need radiators. Okay, but you don't have to get there in order to have something tractable. Okay, you just need to have sufficient thermal buffer and margin so that there's enough time to radiate whatever waste heat you have to radiate.
I mean,
So
ultimately, it's about getting the levelized cost of electricity and cooling down below what it would be on Earth to make it viable to put it in space.
Actually, I don't think that basically we're not talking about the power generation as being an enhancing opportunity here. It's an enabling opportunity, which changes the fundamental cost metric.
Gary,
Well, if not that, then what offsets the launch cost?
Let me make sure I manage to express myself properly. Cost of power generation does matter, and it needs to make there. If you have a choice of choice of the ways that you can provide power, you would like to pick the most cost effective or a range of systems that allow you enough resilience and interoperability to get what you need, when and where you need it. Where you run into a problem is in a space environment right now. You've got photovoltaic, concentrated photovoltaic, and solar dynamic, the promise of it with the latest and greatest Braden cycle stuff. You can do nuclear, fission in various forms, but that it becomes more and more complicated. The traditional mission planning paradigm which we've basically used with respect to at least human space flight, is that you figure out how to accomplish your mission with what you know how to do, and then you gild that or embellish that, okay, to meet additional objectives. But you don't want to create a situation where something has to work that's never been worked before, and then compound that by saying there's yet another thing and yet another thing and yet another thing. Okay, it's a three on the match problem, real fast. So I think that there is potential. We've got potential there. Back to the economics of it. The photovoltaic systems have come down substantially. The space ones are still that push better than 30%. Efficiency are still on so far pricier than what you see in most terrestrial markets, but they're clearly I guess Viasat is a good example. I think they have a 30 kW array on the last bird, and sure as hell the space station has multiple generations now of solar panels at scale. So that I think is something that there's a reasonable handle on. And there is the perspective with respect to the launch stuff. I think we can back that back to something that is I think much more understandable about what's happening here. And the example I'm fond of is that in engaging in a bit of symbolic math here, if the cost of landing 1 kilogram on the moon was X in the days of Apollo, okay, the folks with SLS are claiming that they could reduce that by 1 order of magnitude. Okay, whether or not you believe that or not is a matter of certainly some debate. Okay, the opposite side of the spectrum.
I've never heard that, but that is a surprising number, surprisingly good number.
Okay, now the Elon and the boys and girls in SpaceX have been tilting at a 4 to 5 order of magnitude reduction in launch costs. Now, to put that into perspective, if that were to be achieved, it would be cheaper to land a kilogram of mass on the moon than it would be to transport it from the continental United States to Alaska. Okay, you can argue all you want about irrational exuberance or whatever, but that's the talking point that they're tilting at. Now, I would argue that there's a bit of certainly showy say carnival barking on both of those sides of the argument, but somewhere in between there is a paradigm shift that we're coming up to, which is heretofore everything that we have launched in space, with the exception of a certain Tesla Roadster, has been hyper optimized for size, weight, power, volume, and then you can figure out what you can do with it in terms of functionality. At a certain point, when launch costs become low enough, that paradigm changes to where you go and find the best way you know how to do something, okay, and then figure out how to fly it.
And the SpaceX IPO that came out, I guess not very long ago now, did speak to some of the challenges with orbital data centers, and there were some caveats around it. But one of the things that they did say is that it's dependent on Starship, basically to make the economics work. And that's not a surprise, but it does kind of imply that it would be a challenge to do orbital data centers with today's economics. It's really going to rely to some extent on tomorrow's economics.
See, I think that tomorrow's economics is not that far away because of the advent of the Starship. And I think that crossover point in terms of the paradigm shift is about 3 orders of magnitude. And I think that that's
Yeah.
achievable. Now, and I don't think that's entirely wishful thinking on my part. Okay,
Yeah, I mean, $200 a kilogram? Is that the kind of number you're thinking?
oh, I'd like to get it. I'd like to get it in double digits personally.
Yeah.
The but the because it well, another thing that ends up happening is that there's a certain level of analysis paralysis. Doing a all-up simulation of the space environment gets really complicated and really expensive. And at a certain point, you know, being able to go to a proto-flight approach just ends up, making sense. We did that with respect to the robotic systems, standard interfaces, where we had, various folks come forward that swore they had it all figured out, and that we had their way was the way to make it work, and we ended up doing a round robin uh, between all the folks that claimed that they had something, and every one of those interfaces tested differently when a different lab tested them. Okay, so I am a big fan of getting things, into test and into flight as soon as possible. I'm extraordinarily extraordinarily enthusiastic about computer-aided systems engineering, but in the end, you gotta test it. Okay, as soon as you can, and don't be surprised if you have to learn an awful lot in the process.
Gary, are the terrestrial challenges and roadblocks to data centers here on Earth powerful enough to make data centers in space be preferable in economics because the policies and the grid and the this and the that that they say exist here, gas availabilities, all sorts of things, make them untenable here on Earth?
I have been a party to it. I actually did my first data center designs in the early 1980s. Okay, and have worked on from large scale data centers down to individual small business systems. The answer is that right now the state of the art data centers on Earth are effectively a spaceship that's put into a building and given two or more utility power feeds, a massive uninterruptible power supply, n plus one redundant power supply, plus natural gas generators, on a redundant basis, and a very serious air conditioning system. That's you go in the beautiful Ashburn, Virginia, into a raging data center, as the particular company calls it. That's what you literally see. Okay, so we've been working the problem already. Okay, and
Well, the
it
problem
is
is we don't have enough compute now, and it's exponential. And in fact, the supply chain for natural gas turbines to power these data centers is constrained. In fact, orders are not going to be filled for 3 or 4 years.
yeah,
So it's a big problem, and so the ground-based systems is not going to be enough.
yeah. I think so just the policies, politics, and the logistics that you outlined, David, I believe are enough to drive us towards a significant space data center capability. Okay. Now there are going to be other drivers. It will, I think it, there is, I think there's a return on investment case that's, that it's nascent now, but being, it is being developed as we speak, because to do those calculations, we actually have to untangle what it takes to actually complete the engineering, of it. We need Starship to work, okay, and hopefully, the equivalent of, New Glenn on steroids. Basically, we need, space transportation to, be, effectively a commercial commodity, okay, that has well characterized costs, clearly understood, and routinely available. Um, we're heading there. We're not quite there yet, but each of these pieces, come together, and it's not. I don't think it's going to be one thing. I think it's going to be these other loads that can make use of the heat, as I was referring to earlier. There is going to be infrastructure with people in it. There's going to be manufacturing activities. There's going to, you've got to be able to, run, both the energy storage and the life support systems. You've got all of these things require some combination of heat and power, and our ability to orchestrate them is going to is absolutely critical in those regards. The turning back to the space solar power for a moment, um, if you've uh, if you have a terrestrial power load, you normally know what your power load is. You got a power quality spec. You know where your power is coming from and how far away you are from it. You take that, you go to a what amounts to being a a a lookup table that's where you know for uh, uh, for what it takes to provide cables to your power load, and it tells you how long the cable can be, what it needs to be made out of, how you have to derate it for the environment. Hell, it even tells you what size breaker to put on it. Okay. When you want to go off and deal with power and ancillary services beaming, it turns out that you don't have a lookup table like that. What you have is a model that you have to deal with, and it changes the circumstances. You effectively have to, what is behind the curtain right now with respect to how it is that you get the power that you get when you plug in into a 110 socket in your house. There's a bunch of magic behind the curtain there, okay, that's happening to deliver that power to you. And if you want to do power and ancillary services beaming, you've got, you've got to expose what's behind the curtain and build a model to it, because a static optimization doesn't work. So we're faced with that for AI data centers. It's a complex modeling problem where you're essentially managing a state model uh, where you have flows of energy, flows of data, and flows of matter that are going back and forth across defined interfaces, and how you have to orchestrate that in a manner where you're well within our understanding of first principles physics, as well as a practical execution of economics.
Hey, have you actually published or some analysis of just flows?
Bill,
Have you done some work and shared it?
we're losing
Oh,
audio.
I was asking. Can you hear me okay now?
You're cutting out and freezing.
Okay.
So see if you can do something about it. And now take Gary's time for a minute. Um, we had a guest on several weeks ago, I don't remember his name, or I would tell you his name, that thought space data centers, there's only one company that could make it happen, especially in the near future, and that was SpaceX, because they can price their launches at wholesale. And then I'd like your assessment of the challenges and the roadblocks and the tech and policy challenges for data centers, because they're not going to get a free walk to do whatever they want to do either, in my opinion. And how would you assess the TRL for space data centers today?
With respect to SpaceX, uh, what is needed to bring the cost of launch down is the equivalent of something at the scale of Starship or better. And right now, what they're launching essentially is just a transportation vehicle. It can move mass. It will be able to move mass. It's rather it's I think it's very excuse me. I think it's very credible that it will be able to move mass to low Earth orbit. Okay, in the comparatively near term. So in terms of you know an ability to move mass to low Earth orbit at a significantly lower cost, I think they're definitely going to get there. Now, going through and going from that to building a spaceship that can do all the things that they would like it to do, that's going to take some more time. Okay. The notion of that you can go through and build a large space structure that is capable of significant power generation capabilities, that's scalable and can accommodate a data center's physical volume. I think the existence proof is the ISS in those regards, and it was designed
and
and actually built
Starlink.
with a 400 kilowatt bus. Okay, so and as a scalable power system that was not taken out of it through the evolution of the design. Now, can you figure out how to do that in a cost-effective commercial manner that lets you run it as a 24/7 facility that makes sense the way one has to run a data center? That is a challenge that is going to require something I refer to as orchestrating symbiosis, framework for shared control between humans, robots, and advanced autonoma. There's a lot of work to be done there. It is, but I think it is tractable, and my assertion for that is that our ability to characterize both the problem space and the potential solution space required to have a satisfactory and sufficient solution is there. It's not new science. It's not, no miracles have to be accepted before breakfast.
Gary, I was going to ask, I don't know if my audio is better now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
better now.
I turned off the video just to see if it helps with the bandwidth. I was asking about what you said you'd done a lot of analysis, and I was wondering if you'd put that analysis online on GitHub or publish it in some way so that other people could learn from what you did.
I have done the analysis that I've done is more, actually, I started my research on n-dimensional interaction problems, which this is a case of in the early 1980s under NASA's Graduate Student Researchers Program, and has continued on from various vantage points since then. Most of it is available online. For the most current stuff with respect to the data centers that I've been tilting at, yes, I can make it available online. I believe David was we're going to polish up the the delivery of it, and the stuff that I was doing with Claude is certainly we'll find a way to post it between the Space Show and XISP Inc. And the latest stuff, the last paper that we in presentation that I did on what we call space squared is in was the IAC 2025 in Sydney, Australia. That paper and presentation is available. I'll provide those links to David, and it's also via the XISP Inc. website. And we're working on a, let's see if I can manage to get this to behave again. The where this is a shows a Venn diagram of the stuff that the XISP Inc. Mission Development Consortium has been tilting at in the ensuing years. And the idea is that there's an intersection here where as we better, as I was alluding to earlier, as we better understand both our ability, or as we better understand both the problem space and the potential solution spaces that we need, we can find very useful intersections that can impact more broadly what amounts to being cislunar development. And it almost doesn't matter which piece of the elephant you're grabbing and trying to figure it out, so long as you understand that it's an elephant. So it's back to the argument that channeling the Cheshire Cat's advice, via Lewis Carroll. If you have a clue of where it is you're trying to get to, it's a whole hell of a lot easier to get there. I think that that's where we are now. We do have a clue. We have more than a clue of where we're trying to get to. We have an increasing understanding of the problem space and what it takes to characterize it. And we have to be about the pragmatic engineering of getting things done at whatever scale we can and build on that.
Just nobody had a question. I was going to ask if Dr. Suzanne Sincavage or Kevin Barry are working with you. Is that just because they joined the call today? And if they are, then maybe they can introduce themselves and say what they're doing.
Yes, please do, gang.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kevin, you first.
All right. I put a couple of links in. First, just on the data center piece. In general, I think it is notable that Starlink at present has about 300 megawatts of collection in orbit right now and has a very large amount of compute already on board their approximately 10,000 satellites which are in orbit, which represent more than half of all of the satellites in orbit, and about 2/3 at this point. And so if you're looking for an existence proof of can you put a data center in space, SpaceX has already done it. That is what the Starlink constellation is. There's nothing really fundamentally different about the power collection, heat dissipation, and compute requirements that are physically different than what they're already doing. And that's at a launch cost that they have made profitable off of Falcon 9, let alone off of Starship. So in terms of, is it possible? Yes, it's certainly possible. And as you have a sort of, in terms of the economics, a linear decrease in cost leads to an exponential increase in utilization. And what we saw with aviation is we saw 1 order of magnitude drop from 1940 to 2015, and that had an 80-fold increase in the amount of utilization of airframes. So when you see a 3 or 4 more order of magnitude drop in space, the amount of space we're going to see is going to jump correspondingly. If Starship achieves close to what they're aiming for, they're going to be able to launch things into orbit as cheaply as you can put it on a plane. And so that's going to really change what you can do, what even makes sense to do. And we're sort of exploring, what does that solution space look like moving forward here. And the little calculator, the second link, you can put in whatever assumptions you want in that, but it's not very hard to show that based on current trajectories, early 2030s, it's more cost effective to build in space than it is on the ground, just based on current growth trajectories on what cost of space hardware, cost of launch is looking like it's going to be. And that's not to say anything about the politics on the ground or the massive interconnection queue of getting power sources online on the ground. That is its whole own problem.
Kevin, the
Yes.
Starship, I know it doesn't have competition now, but are there going to be other players, or is Starship the name of the game for the foreseeable lifetime?
For the moment, Blue is going to try and get into the ring. Right now, the reason that SpaceX is able to be in this sort of place of its own is if you look at the cost of Starship, it's unbelievable. If you look at the price of Starship, it's not so unbelievable because to a certain extent, they can sell at a 90% profit margin and no one can compete with them. So the reason that SpaceX is going to have an edge here is that they're playing with house money. Any launch they do inside of their own business is because they have extra capacity they can't otherwise sell and might as well use. But it's because they're not really lowering that price of service nearly so fast as they're lowering their cost of service. That's why they're sort of in a place of their own. Like in terms of if I were to launch a data center in space outside of SpaceX, I think that there might be competition from Blue in terms of would I buy from SpaceX or would I buy from Blue Origin. But if SpaceX is launching them, they're so much better than what Blue can possibly compete with. Does that make sense? Is the difference there?
Yeah, we've been hearing that from other guests on
Yeah.
the space show too.
Yeah. So to back up a little bit, I was asked to introduce myself. My name is Kevin Barry. I am working with Gary. There's sort of a aspirational, we want to have a contract of one of those things in the Venn diagram. If and when we can get funding and green light to do them, I'm sort of on deck to be working with Gary. I helped form Space Squared and to form some of those pieces together, and I'm going and I will be presenting on my state of the industry on space solar power and on space data centers at ISDC under the XISP banner in about a month here as well.
What is your academic and work background?
So my academic background is varied. Suffice it to say, I have done engineering, physics, and environmental sciences undergrad, and then I have a master's in real estate development and urban planning. And I have been doing sort of thought leadership and economic space infrastructure research the last 5-6 years and have been published bunch of times for different things I'm working on. And I'm sort of looking at that niche of what is the economics of building infrastructure, how it comes about, and what are sort of the price things that are happening. That's where my niche is. And with Gary, I also have been working in ANSYS to do orbital dynamic stuff and our designs on trying to put stuff around the moon and be able to have some of that under my belt as well.
Can we hear from Suzanne and what your background is and what you're doing?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I'm Suzanne Sincavage. I have a PhD in public health epidemiology. I subspecialized with the PhD in biological terrorism, preparedness and response. My background is I've had a woman-owned small business for quite some time. I retired and still wanted to serve. And so I created that. But as I developed, I decided I wanted to put some investment money into creating a nonprofit. And so I built the Foundation for Biodefense Research. And the goal, I participated in 7 co-authorships with primarily military textbooks. And most recently covered AI in humanity with humanity and worked a great deal this past year working on biological safety in space. So I've gone from looking at threats to researching what is possible with actually with Surf's direction and Gary and Kevin, we would really like to build an infrastructure where we have this secured transfer of biological data as we move forward in biology and more, the biology of everything from critical minerals, rocks to stars. We're going to authenticate the DNA of everything and to make it secure. They say that you can only take that we all die alone, and we can't take money with us, but we take our DNA with us. So I think it's very important in the astrobiology program of NASA. Supporting that is a dream of mine, and with Gary and Kevin's support, we are building that node as we speak to transfer biological data, plants to animals, for Earth observation in a secured environment. So that is my goal. It's my passion. So I'll be at the space meeting coming up and talk about some of the really for this world ideas that I have for building maybe the biggest repository ever known.
It's like
So
a
that's what I'd like
giant
to do.
digital arc of just
Yes.
collect all of the various species of Earth and figure out how to store them long term, so that as we find more or get deviation on other places, we need to have a really good historical archive of all of the DNA of what is on Earth. So if we lose species, something happens, or if we get branching, we know how to trace it back.
That's right. And it's just so exciting when you take a look at the entire environment in space. There's so many opportunities to case study and work in a laboratory that is space-based. So just imagine some of the work and progression we could do in health and finding cures in space. That'd be really great.
So you'll be
Kevin?
discussing this at ISDC?
Me personally or
Yes.
professionally? No,
Yes, you are.
no,
You don't have an official presentation, but
oh god, yeah.
They're also every
I'm
night in
officially.
the presidential suite. There's a
Absolutely.
whiteboard and networking sessions. So and what we've gone off and
Gary
done.
and I will be hosting the presidential suite
Yeah.
and having the party there every night.
Hey,
Also,
Kevin.
there's the notion of going through with the various discussions in both in the space solar power and the lunar track and others, where you can morph the meeting from a discussion of not so much what you've done in the past, but given where we are now, what can we do going forward on a both stressing coordination, cooperation, collaboration, and competition.
Kevin and Suzanne, would you guys be open to talking biological development in space on the space show?
I would love it. I would.
Well, I need your email addresses so you
I'll
can.
put it in the chat.
And unfortunately, I won't be at the space meeting, but I'd love to hear what you guys are all talking about. But
Really, I'll share that with you.
Marshall from Oklahoma is a latecomer to the show today. Marshall, what is your question?
My question's basically to Kevin, and I think what you were saying about SpaceX and Starship is right on the money, but I think you should have emphasized the fact of the version 3 Starlink and its upgrade and what it's in short term could produce. And then you have to look at what is the possibility of electronic design to make it even more powerful in 10, 20 years.
Oh, assuredly. And I think that there's Gary has talked about this, and I agree, looking at it from sort of the economic side of things of up till now, most space assets have been designed in an austerity mindset where getting things into space is very costly and very weight sensitive. So you would be willing to sacrifice performance if it meant that you could get more efficient weight and have it be lighter. And this is why, getting a single kilogram on the moon is on the order of $10 million right now. And, as you take and look at that, and that's getting stuff to space. If you want to bring stuff back, it's like even more. Like getting particles ejected from the solar flux that have been brought back from those are in the quintillions of dollars per kilogram range. So extraction of mass from space, we're not there yet, but there is this sort of change that's happening where once you hit a certain launch cost and we start to see something below $500 or $100 per kilogram getting into space, you stop designing for austerity and you start saying, no, I'm just going to design for performance. I don't care if I have, a 3 or 4% loss rate because I'll just launch more. And it becomes significantly cheaper to launch more and to launch it at a lower quality. And that's more of an industrial mindset than a space mindset. And that transition, people talk about it. If you talk industrial design for space, space people laugh you out of the room. And if you talk space in an industrial setting, they laugh you out of the room. And we haven't crossed that divide yet. But what you're saying about what's going to happen with Starship and what's going to happen with V3 and what happens after, that is an industrial conversation. Because sorry.
Go ahead.
And you also have the economics, because once you take and mass produce something, the price drops way down. And in turn, you can say, hey, I can expend the weight to improve the service, which brings in the money. And therefore you get a paradigm shift of economics, which is what we're all going to be happy about.
Absolutely. And I've written some papers on exactly this, of looking at how that works in situ resource utilization and how that shift happens between, like, when we took and we went to the New World from Europe, you brought everything from lumber and water and everything was on those first ships. But then you took and you have this economic optimization towards building stuff in situ versus having to go back and forth. But even, 50 years in, it was still very profitable to cut down logs, ship them across the Atlantic, have them carved into a chair, and have the chair shipped back in order to have it, because a chair factory was more expensive than a double Atlantic voyage. And that's kind of what we're looking at in space of, where is that cost of logistics there? And your point about what happens with Starship, one Starship factory, if they're able to produce a Starship a month and it's able to launch 50-ish times, and they can do it 3 times per week, let alone 3 times per day, that Starship will launch more in a single year than the total collective rest of all of space launches to date. And that's the kind of, it's like there is a before Starship and an after Starship conversation. And it's, what happens over here is very hard to predict because we don't know. It's a whole new world.
And engineering paradigm shift, I think, is my favorite phrase.
Yes.
So Marshall, I highly recommend that you look at that Mach 33 report that I put in the chat. I've also put it on David's blog. They look at scaling version 3 Starlink 5 times. So it goes from 20 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts. And they look at the engineering and the thermodynamics around cooling that. And so that's exactly what you were asking. Hey, Kevin, what track are you going to be on at ISDC?
I'm going to be in the Space Solar Power Symposium. I think I'm talk 4, Gary. It's you and Mankins and then Ken and then me. So
okay. And what day is that?
Thursday.
That is the 4th of June, Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday. Okay, great.
Thursday
Thank you.
morning.
Excellent.
And I dropped into the chat the Excel models, the role models that I was playing with, and I'm going to be, as I said, I was going to be working with David and others to package that together. But for the purposes of exploring the problem space, the pieces of it are there. The key thing is really the distinction as to whether or not you can solve this as a as a PV radiator solution, or whether or not you need a combined heat and power solution.
Yeah.
My contention is that a combined heat and power solution takes you from just having a tenable solution to a tractable solution. You want the hallmark of a good of the best data centers are ones that not just work well when everything's performing in a nominal sense, but also continue to work well in the presence of failures, and can also deal with rogue actors.
Yeah. And I will say that there's some fun stuff you can play with there that, depending on how you optimize, like most data centers on the ground, they optimize the chipsets to aim in the 110 degrees Celsius as their operating temp. If you can push that into the 120 degree regime, because temperature is falling off as the fourth order of magnitude, if you can run your processors a little bit hotter, your amount of performance and surface area required for any level of heating solution, whether it's combined heat and power or radiator, is hugely affected. And if you have just a little bit of an optimization on running those chips hot, which you can do at that kind of scale, it makes a really, really big difference in the numbers too.
And from a practical engineering standpoint, you want 120 degrees to be well within your
Yeah.
thermal
You don't want to
balance
redline
capability.
it.
Okay.
Can you guys explain what you mean by combined heat and power? I thought that was like a system for generating heat for a neighborhood or something, as well as making electricity, and I don't understand how that applies to space.
It actually is that.
It is that, but
Okay.
how do you take the excess waste heat and generate more electricity from it, rather than trying to get rid of that heat, use it again, and just keep degrading the quality of heat by sucking out more utility out of it?
Guys, let me
you're
step in
effectively
real quick.
using it.
Hold on a minute, Gary. We have a hard stop in 10 minutes at 90 minutes. And Gary, thank you for spending more time with us than you intended. But everybody keep in mind it's a hard stop in 10 minutes. So be succinct and let your need to wind it down, I guess. So go ahead, Gary. Sorry I stepped on you.
So the answer to your question is it is the same thing. What you're doing is you're looking at all of the multiple heat taps that you can bring in. And it is what combined heat and power does is it says you need a thermal balance. You do not just go through and say, I'm going to suck power, and when I'm done, it's just waste heat, somebody else's problem. Instead, you say, hey, I can use this as a resource.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people have studied the idea of getting electric power out of a small thermal difference, like what you'd have in a space solar power satellite or any sort of space satellite. Is the thermal gradient there is not very big. I don't think there's a lot of economic potential in getting out power from that.
It isn't just power. The heat itself. Do you like staying alive?
Why would you want to get rid of heat?
Do you have a high vac system in your house?
Yeah, but this is a case where you want to get rid of the heat. You don't want to heat
no.
your house in space.
You want to use the heat. Whether or not you're generating electricity from it or you're using it for the various processes, manufacturing or otherwise, or just keeping yourself alive or providing, the thermal buffer
Yeah.
to minimize the cycling that's required in your structures. These are all things you can do with that heat, short of just trying to reject it.
Okay, well, I heard you say you were using the heat to make electricity, and I was just addressing the point that you
Oh,
can't make
that's at
economically make
the
electricity.
top of the stack.
It just doesn't make sense, is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't make sense
The
to try to make
highest
electricity out of that heat.
you use in terms of heat taps, what you do for generating power is uses the highest delta T or thermal difference.
Yeah.
Strictly for those reasons. The more modest or lower grade heat taps, you do whatever makes sense. The trick is with combined heat and power is that you orchestrate all of those taps to achieve the thermal balance.
Yeah. So one of the things you can do, Phil, as a hard and fast thing is there are, first of all, two different ways you can approach the data center and space problem. You can either approach it like a scuba diver trying to deal with going down into the cold, high pressure, deep ocean, or you can build a submarine that contains it, and then you just have a normal person inside of a submarine and you don't try and adapt to your environment. And so the presence of the sort of submarine that is the ISS allows a 2 teraflop, just standard server rack to operate at full spec on board of the ISS at present. And so if you're running a data center and you maintain ambient temperature and conditions, that is going to use a lot of that waste heat of no, the computers don't need to be comfortable in the same way that people do, but providing that environment does take a significant amount of energy. And if you provide that via waste heat, it means that you're having a use for it. The second thing you can do for it is this is a huge, huge, huge amount of surface area. And if you don't have this way high up in geo, your levels of drag and needing to maintain position is going to be significant. And if you start to preheat your fuels, you're going to get more delta V out of that to stay in orbit. So you can use that and then reject the mass away already hot rather than trying to have it radiate away. There is no ability to have conduction or convection in space, but you can physically reject hot mass from the station as a means of getting rid of heat and increasing your delta V. So there are different ways that you can get a bite at that apple.
Yeah, these don't sound like legitimate engineering ideas to me. I really feel like on this show we have to call out bullshit, and that's bullshit.
Okay,
Like
Gary.
saying you can heat a fuel with the excess heat from the solar panels that the sun is putting on your spaceship, saying you can use that energy to heat a house when the whole goal is to get rid of the heat and vent it into space. That's what's going on here, and you're making up stuff that doesn't make any sense at all. Honestly, I think it's ridiculous.
Gary, you got to start to wind it down and give us closing comments.
Okay, so the issue is that you can look at, and in terms of what Kevin was referring to, you have a situation where how it is that you maintain fuel in space, whether or not you're going through and running fuel cells or you're doing hydrolysis, separating or recombining hydrogen and oxygen. It's not bullshit. It's how we deal with it in the real world in space now. Can it be extrapolated in terms of a cryogenic management system or a hydrogen and oxygen management system such that it makes sense as part of a combined heat and power problem? Not entirely clear, but it certainly has potential, and I'd be more than happy to take you to the mat on the physics of any of it. Okay, I would encourage take him down or me down based on the actual calculations, and I'm more than happy to concede a point, and I desperately want to be right, even if I have to eat an awful lot of crow and learn a lot to get there.
Any closing comments from anybody else? Want to jump in before we sign off and thank Gary?
Forward to seeing you at ISDC.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. I hope to meet all of you.
Same here.
Yeah.
Well,
And David, please email us what you'd like Suzanne to take and talk about, and I'll see how I can help make that happen with you.
yeah.
Hey, I suggest that we have two two space shows, one maybe on Kevin's presentation and then another on Dr. Sincavage.
That's what I know. It's okay.
Sure.
From ISDC presentations, is that what you're referring to, John?
Well, yeah, Kevin has one. I don't think Suzanne does, but she has a different topic than his. And I think it would be two separate shows. It'd be interesting.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking of biological development in space. That's a pretty
That's hers.
interesting
That would be
and
hers.
unique topic.
Yeah. Yeah, she call her back for that for sure.
Marshall, did you have a closing comment?
I was going to say I agree with that because both issues are pretty much totally unique, and they've taken the trouble to think through it. And that's the kind of thing the space show needs to tap is original thinking.
All right.
All right, gang.
Want to thank everybody for coming on board, and Gary for staying longer, and for Suzanne and Kevin for joining us. We appreciate it. Remember, everybody, we're a nonprofit, so those of you listening and everybody else in the universe, if you like us, we'd love to have your support. So at thespaceshow.com, there is a PayPal button in the upper right corner, and on Substack, they have their own system. And if you're on Substack, you're already familiar with that system, so have at it. And we thank you for your support. I will absolutely miss being at ISDC, but they planned it on my 80th birthday, so
Oh, happy
Oh, congratulations. Happy
Wow.
revision cycle, David.
but
is awesome,
keep your
David.
eyes open for great guests and topics for the space show, because that's what I do at conferences. I look for new programming, new ideas, and new guests.
Yeah, can you drop the link directly
To a link
to the
to
space? Yes, I guess. Actually, I haven't. Okay.
Yeah,
No,
so-
sorry about that.
just thespaceshow.com, and you
Got
probably have to confirm you're a human, because we're trying to defeat the LLMs, but it's a losing battle, I can tell you that. Thank you again, Gary.
Our next meeting.
We appreciate
You're
it,
welcome.
and we'll look forward to talking to you again. And everybody, as we like to say, keep looking up, and have a great weekend, and have a great Mom's Day if you're a mother, if you still have a mother to deal with, or if you have a mother to remember. And we come back on next Tuesday with another ISD show with Rod Pyle and Aggie Coburn. So once again, good weekend, everybody. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
I'm going to
Thank
open
you
up the Builder
so
World
much.
meeting next.
Okay.
Take care.
Stay on, Gary. Do we stay on?
Yeah, I'll click on the Builder World link.
Okay. All right. I'm going to log out and